Just steady, aim, and pull on it. Nothing to it.
Hollywood once abandoned this film. It was a story that came from a teacher, a man who had witnessed more than 20 murders right in front of his own home. The rights were once sold for just $1. Even the extras were real Crips gang members. But somehow, South Central saved more lives than Hollywood ever imagined. Watch until the very end because I have a special gift waiting for you. Number 12. For just $1, selling the book rights to the director. If many film studios wanted to buy your life story, but one person offered exactly $1, what would you do? Donald Bakir chose that person. Bakir was a teacher in South Central Los Angeles, where he witnessed far too many students being pulled into gangs and street violence. That was what pushed him to write the original South Central LA Crips, the original work that would later become South Central. At that time, Bakir's book had been bid on by several African-American film companies. But what Bakir feared was not selling his story cheaply, it was seeing it turned into a crowd-pleasing action movie that only exploited guns and violence. Bakir wanted to preserve a story about fatherhood, education, and the chance for redemption for those who grew up surrounded by gangs. And it was Hearts of Stone that made Bakir believe director Anderson truly understood the story he wanted to tell. Ironically, Hollywood forgot South Central. Perhaps that was their biggest mistake. Because they turned their backs on a candle of hope, one that helped thousands of black people believe they could walk out of the ghetto. If you believe this film deserves to be spread further, leave one like so the story of South Central can continue to live again. Number 11. The extras were real gang members. Bobby drives past a row of old apartment buildings. Groups of young men stand along the roadside, just staring each other down. The atmosphere is so tense that it feels like one wrong sentence could make everything explode. And the important thing is, many of those eyes in that scene did not belong to actors, they were real gang members in real life. The film crew did not simply walk into South Central and turn on the cameras. That would have been almost suicidal. They had to ask for permission. They had to provide food to the neighborhood for weeks. They had to negotiate with the local Crips. Some of those people even appeared directly in the frame as extras. And perhaps that's why South Central doesn't feel like a movie. Number 10. Author Donald Bakir lived in a place where 20 murders happened over 17 years. There are places where students aren't afraid of being late for school, they're afraid of not making it all the way to class. That's the story of Donald Bakir, a teacher who spent 17 years teaching in South Central Los Angeles, a neighborhood where more than 20 people were murdered during the time he lived there. By day, he taught children how to read and write. By night, he witnessed murder scenes right in front of his door. But he still decided to stay, because leaving meant surrendering. Over 30 years, he spoke with more than 500 gang members, and he wrote the classic book, The Original South Central LA Crips. He did everything he possibly could. The story helped many black people believe that family and education were the way out of a life of crime. Number 9. Glenn Plummer studied real-life prisoners. Metal clanged harshly inside the prison cafeteria in 1992. The lunch tray in Bobby's hand slammed straight into the face of the man opposite him. Blood from the man's nose splattered amid the chaotic screams of the inmates. That look in his eyes was exactly like someone who had lived too long inside violence and rage. Because before playing a prisoner, Glenn Plummer spent a great deal of time meeting former gang members, people in prison, and people trying to learn how to rebuild their lives. He observed their eyes, their anger, and the way they reacted to the world around them. More than anything, he studied the torment of fathers who realized their own sons were walking down the same path they once did.
For me, it's too late, but not for you.
Perhaps that's why Bobby Johnson never appears as a Hollywood gangster. He appears as a real man desperately trying to win back his son before everything is too late. Number 8. Ray Ray, inspired by the founder of the Crips.
You buy it from me, the money stays in the hood.
Do you remember who this is? The man who drags both Bobby and his son Jimmy into the cycle. The streets, prison, death. For Ray Ray, killing is a test. If you want to be recognized, if you want to survive on those streets, then you have to pull the trigger yourself. According to Donald Bakir, Ray Ray was inspired by Raymond Washington, the real-life founder of the Crips in the late 1960s. He manipulates the entire neighborhood, keeping gang culture and violence passing from one generation to the next.
We are deuce, and we multiply.
One big question is raised. Can someone who grows up among gangs truly escape? Bobby and his son are the clearest answer. Perhaps that's why, after watching South Central, many people were able to do something miraculous just like them. Number 7. The film was released at the exact moment Los Angeles was at its most chaotic. In 1992, Los Angeles seemed to be sinking into one of the most violent civil uprisings in its history. The spark exploded on April 29th after the Rodney King verdict. It led to days of arson, looting, and violence that left more than 60 people dead. And in the middle of that brutal atmosphere, South Central was released. Hollywood at the time was deeply worried that gang films would pour more fuel onto the fire. To position the film as a message of reconciliation instead of something that would provoke more violence, the filmmakers invited Reverend Jesse Jackson to provide the voiceover for the trailer. And even now, that trailer still stays with me. With its sorrowful, heavy background music, it was completely different from the noisy style of early 1990s urban films. It felt like a grieving breath for the lost soul still wandering in the streets. Number 6. The author appeared in the film. Jimmy sits there with empty eyes, his body covered in injuries after the shooting. The psychologist, Dr. King, gently sits beside him and softly speaks about another life that's still waiting for him. If you look very closely, that man is Donald Bakir, the author who wrote the story of South Central. In the end, he appeared inside the very story he'd written. Even though it was only a small role, it felt like the moment a teacher stepped onto the screen to try to pull one more child away from the dark road he'd seen far too many times in real life. Number 5. The film failed at the box office but was praised by critics. Hollywood once forgot South Central. While Boys in the Hood and New Jack City were both shown in more than 900 theaters, South Central opened on only 37 screens. It earned around $1.37 million despite having a production budget of up to $4 million. But at the 1992 premiere, actor Tupac Shakur said, "I love both the book and this movie." That was recognition from someone who clearly understood the life South Central was portraying. Even Roger Ebert, the legendary critic, gave the film 3.5 out of 4 stars, calling it a painful lesson about family, education, and redemption. That support made audiences search for and pass around VHS tapes throughout black neighborhoods in the early 1990s. Even though it failed financially, South Central quietly saved the lives of young black men and taught the responsibility of fatherhood.
You ain't my daddy. You ain't Bobby Johnson. Who are you?
Number 4. The support of Oliver Stone. Imagine standing beneath the porch of a house in South Central Los Angeles. Willie Manchester's cold stare pins Jimmy in the silent night. Bang! Jimmy falls freely from the fence like a bird with broken wings in midair. That rawness caused South Central to be rejected by a series of major studios. The turning point only came when the script was sent to the office of legendary director Oliver Stone. After reading it on a flight, he immediately contacted director Anderson to support the project. As executive producer, he used his personal reputation to persuade Warner Brothers. Without that nod of approval, this haunting story of redemption might have remained forever on the page instead of becoming an immortal symbol of street cinema. Number 3. The man who shot Jimmy had once been connected to a gang.
That was an accident!
Go back more than 30 years to that dusty warehouse. Little Jimmy stands there with a furious face, the gun barrel aimed straight at Willie. The large man can now only stammer and beg in desperation. Every time I watch this scene again, my hand seems to tremble along with Willie. This feels almost like a documentary about himself, because he was a core member of the notorious 83 Trey gangster Crips in South Los Angeles. He had been tied to the bloody conflicts in South Central during the late 1970s and early 1980s. Because he was so familiar with real-life violence, Willie's bloodless, terrified face feels completely natural. It's as if the real breath of the streets accidentally slipped straight into the frame of South Central. Number 2. A wake-up message for fathers.
If you don't go back there now, you'll be running from the law for the rest of your life.
This movie saved my life. A friend once told me that after watching South Central at the exact time his father had gone to prison. The film was like a reminder that he could not allow himself to get involved with gangs or end up with any criminal record. And now he's become a proud father.
I mean, it's not about killing.
What makes South Central different is that the film does not idolize gangsters. People see how that road truly ends. Prison and children growing up without their fathers. Even Glenn Plummer, the actor who played Bobby, once shared that after the film was released, many men came to meet him. They said his final lines in the movie made them begin caring more about their children's lives. And perhaps it's because of that message that South Central is still being talked about by audiences more than 30 years later.
I'm willing to die here today, Ray, for my boy, because I love him that much.
Number 1. A special screening for students. Few people know that after South Central was completed, a special screening was organized for black students at a high school in Washington, D.C. Imagine an auditorium packed with children who grew up every day among guns, gangs, and the temptations of the streets. Instead of letting them step blindly into the cycle of the streets, prison, death, the film allowed them to see that ending in advance through the life of Bobby Johnson right from their school seats. And the applause that rang out that day felt like confirmation. South Central had opened a path for an entire generation standing on the edge of collapse. It even reminded them that no one would save them except themselves. Bonus: Bear, Bobby's friend who once appeared in Boys in the Hood. Inside the Benz driving through the streets of South Central, 4 young men laugh and joke as if Bobby had never been arrested. But did you notice Bobby's friend sitting in the back? The very first time I watched it, I felt that face was extremely familiar, and that feeling was real. Lexie Bigham, who played Bear in South Central, had previously appeared in Boys in the Hood. He was the man standing on the basketball court, throwing the ball back to Ricky. Perhaps it's because Lexie Bigham never carried the feeling of an ordinary Hollywood actor. He appears on screen like someone who had lived his whole life in those neighborhoods. South Central is not simply a story about street violence. It's the painful yet hopeful journey of a father trying to save his son from the spiral of the Crips gang. In the middle of streets where death is always lurking and fatherly love is the most fragile thing left. Which scene between Bobby and his son impressed you the most? Leave a comment and tell me which film you want to discover the hidden stories behind next.